right, so with that, it's time now that we lay our focus towards the industry keynote, ladies and gentlemen. Well, how does the future of data centers look like in India specifically? Because is it really ready for that pressure and that evolution that we did speak of as I welcomed and welcomed all of you? Well, customer experience, they say, is driven by business intelligence. That's the new trend that we're going to be talking about. While I can see your digital footprints across all the activities that you are definitely engaging into on the platform, it's time that I really hand over the virtual strings of the conversation to the CEO of NTT India. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up this time for Sharad Sanghi.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to thank the team from Economic Times for inviting me as the keynote speaker in the Digital Warrior Summit Data Center track. I'll be presenting today about data centers in India, the road ahead. So my floor is first setting a little bit of context about why data centers in India are poised for massive growth, taking you through India's journey, and then taking you through how cloud is fueling the growth. A little bit of customer classification, talking about a little bit about core and edge data centers, next generation data center design, and what are the key considerations in choosing the right data center service provider. So India has more than 1.26 billion people with unique digital identity. This is unbelievable. In addition to that, almost 60x traffic growth has happened in the last 5 years, and an average subscriber consumes almost 13.5 GB of data usage per day. There are more than 70 crores Indian online. If you look at the Indian internet economy, digital payments have grown at a CAGR of 55% over the past 5 years. India is also the fastest growing OTT market. Indian e-commerce market is expected to grow to US dollars 200 billion by 2026. India's internet startup leaders are expected to hit a combined market cap of 180 billion by 2025. Indians spent an average of 2.5 hours daily on social media, and festive sales on e-commerce platforms grew to $8.3 billion in 2020 from $5 billion in 2019. If you look at the market itself and compare it with the other countries, India is still a fraction of if you look at it in terms of net operational square feet. And when it comes to China, India's per capita density is 1/6 that of China. Even though India is currently at 375 megawatt and is expected to triple over the next 3 to 4 years, it's still a fraction of what China is and some of the more developed markets are. 43% of utilized colo capacity is occupied by public cloud, which is an amazing statistic considering that this growth happened from 2015 onwards. If you look at it from a regulatory and government policy perspective, I think one of the key drivers that happened recently was the announcement of a data protection bill. It's still getting finalized, but basically data is getting classified in terms of general, sensitive, and critical. Data storage of sensitive and critical data has to happen in the country, and critical data should not only be stored but also processed within the country. So this results in a tremendous boost for local data centers. Even from a data center park perspective, the center announced in last year's budget, they proposed that they would announce a data center policy. And the data center park policy the draft policy was recently announced for public feedback. And some of the amazing features in that policy include giving special status, for example, essential services status for data centers. This was extremely useful in the pandemic. Across the country, data centers were treated as essential services. And so we could operate these data centers even in the strictest of lockdown conditions. Data centers are also it is being proposed to give data centers infrastructure status, which will attract a lot of foreign investment. There is alterations to the National Building Code proposed, and this would help in things like parking. It would help in things like fire detection and suppression, using more advanced technologies for the same. From a fiber and power perspective, which are the two main lifelines of data centers, the policy envisages obviously still to be finalized, but ways of interconnecting data centers. Maybe hopefully a dial before you dig policy would be adopted by the government. From a power perspective, the recommendations are to have a dual grid supply possible wherever it's available, and maybe look at a deemed distribution license for data center providers. From a state perspective, also, several state governments have proposed several incentives, especially during the pandemic, for building data center parks in the respective states to attract investment or to create direct and indirect jobs. Our recommendation has been to always have a level playing field, so that give equal opportunity to all data center providers and not limited to the first few. Um, because of all these things, because of the huge growth, because of the incentives, the data localization, data centers are therefore poised for massive growth. It is expected, as per the latest JLL report, that data centers will triple in capacity in the next 5 years. New capacity addition in India will almost provide a $4.9 billion opportunity. There's significant PE investment happening in this space as well, and many global top players have announced their entry into the Indian market. If you look at India's journey, right, I would classify stage one, where there were from 2000 to 2002, where the dot com boom and bust happened. With the advent of dot coms in the year 2000, there was a need to host them locally, and initial data centers, including our data centers, started in the year 2000. In stage two was when the focus was outsourcing from captive to third party data centers. Many companies realized the benefits of outsourcing and therefore started, and this was also the time where a lot of enterprises started adopting data centers. Stage three was when cloud awareness gained momentum. So there was some initial cloud deployment started to happen in data centers. And from 2015 onwards, there was emergence of data centers, hyperscale data center facilities, and more recently, hyperscale data center campuses or hyperscale data center parks. From a client classification perspective, we generally classify clients into three or four categories. One is the cloud native customers, and these are the clients that basically were born in the cloud. They do everything on the cloud, and these could be some of the new internet companies. It could also be in the traditional companies, certain newer applications that are all on the cloud, customer facing applications, for example. We also have a large segment of enterprise clients. These clients are typically, for example, banking customers, manufacturing clients. Some of their applications could be cloud native in nature, but essentially they have a lot of mission critical applications, and maybe in a lot of these cases only the branches and their clients need to access them. A lot of it depends on branch connectivity to a central site, and of course, from a client perspective, they could be also available over the internet. And then you have the government, and then you have the hyperscalers, right, and OTT players. So these are the general classification that we would do in three or four buckets. Of course, the enterprise segment would cover all the major verticals. So if you look at why, so one can ask, yes, there is, the new policy favoring it, but why still there has been such a big growth in data centers? And really the main reason is everything moving to the cloud, everything being consumed as a service. If you look at the cloud itself, there are three main forms of cloud consumption. One is software as a service, platform as a service, and infrastructure as a service. Some of the compute intensive applications include leverage big data, AI, and machine learning. A lot of organizations are doing digital transformation. They're automating, they're leveraging digital to make their processes more efficient and increasing productivity, as well as improving customer experience. There's been an aggressive connectivity rollout, in terms of 4G expansion, 5G trials, BharatNet expansion into rural India, and of course, there has been a lot of policy play that I've already spoken about in terms of data protection and localization and incentives to data center parks, both at the center as well as in the state. So now let's talk a little bit about core and edge data centers. So typically when you talk about core data centers, I refer to more as compute and storage related key applications, could be for digital transformation, could be for video streaming, could be for e-commerce. It could be compute-intensive applications, as I mentioned earlier, fueled by big data analytics and AI and ML, and other enterprise applications like core banking or SAP or ERP applications, customer relationship management applications, etc. The edge data centers are still to take off in India, but we believe that this will happen in the next few years, where the content needs to be close to the client, and these are fueled because of latency sensitive applications. For example, it could be driven by, for example, OTT players who want to prevent buffering from happening. It could be because of industrial automation, augmented and virtual reality applications as they become more popular, retail mobility, IoT in terms of smart connected cars, blockchain related applications, and video and multimedia content access applications. And of course, with the advent of more fiber being rolled out, with the advent of 5G, we will start seeing edge data centers become a reality in India as well. Now let's talk a little bit about the design of data centers. And if you look at typically next generation data centers, they're characterized by four key criteria. So even stepping back, there is mobility, people are doing digital transformation, there's Internet of Things, there's software as a service, social media, analytics. These are the key trends. And this results in unpredictable workloads, dense workloads, copious and voluminous data, and the need for data security. And this can be fulfilled by next generation data centers, which are secure, resilient, elastic, and at the same time, for sustainable development, they need to be green. So let's just spend a few minutes on each of these four areas. So first of all, let's talk about maintaining resiliency. How do you avoid human error, right? And that is done through process and training. How do you ensure round-the-clock power availability? So you take that into account in your design. Some people do N+1, some people do N+N, some people go to 2N+1 designs. From a geographic locations perspective, data center service providers spend a lot of time in doing diligent site selection. Data centers should not be in an area that's flood prone, that's earthquake prone, that is subject to a lot of riots, that needs to be a secure area, etc., etc. From a building structure perspective, you have to propose the building as per data center standards. You also need to take care of, depending on the earthquake zone that you are building the data center in, additional measures to, mitigate risk of any earthquake. From a cooling perspective, you have to look at rack density planning and thermal inertia. And from a connectivity perspective, you need to have multiple fiber paths and maintain carrier neutrality. From a green data center perspective, you want to lower your power usage efficiency. Thereby, you don't only lower your operating costs, but you also give the benefit to the client. You want to and this can be achieved by doing efficient cooling. And obviously, this all results in reduction in carbon footprint. A lot of data center service providers are increasingly using renewable energy sources. And so they wheel renewable energy to the grid and thereby trying to become carbon neutral. If equipment is selected for high energy efficiency, you align to ASHRAE cooling standards so that you don't have to no longer operate data centers at 18 plus or minus 2. That used to be the norm earlier. Now we operate data centers closer to 26 plus or minus 2 degrees. And of course, many data center providers are also getting their equipment, the data center building certified from the Green Building Council. From an elasticity perspective, earlier the traditional data centers had, from a network, storage, and compute were all in silos, and now it's all software design. So, with the advent of cloud, there's more automation. Everything can be provisioned and decommissioned by point and click. And this results in on-demand services, whether it's related to compute, storage, network, it's all on demand. And this is really what we are seeing now in the hyperscale data centers that we see in India. I can't emphasize more on both physical and virtual security. Data centers are classified with 7 layers of physical security at the very minimum. And of course, there are some data center providers that go beyond this. Whether it's security at the entrance, whether it's your under vehicle scanners, whether it's your baggage scanners, extra care at the basement. If you have a basement in the building, security turnstiles to only allow authorized and registered employees and visitors. Obviously, CCTV cameras, um, biometric and card proximity readers, and of course, physical locks to cages and racks. So there are, a combination of these and more, that these are just the bare minimum that a good quality data center provider would have. And from a virtual security perspective, there would be, from a network and infrastructure perspective, at the very minimum, we would have denial of service protection, vulnerability assessment and penetration testing services enabled, firewalling, and IPS, IDS management. From a data center workloads and endpoint protection, there is there are a whole suite of services that I won't go into detail with. And then, of course, from an application perspective, there is application vulnerability assessment and penetration planning. There's web application firewall services. There's brand protection. There's digital asset management, and many, many more services. Not all co-location providers offer these services, but data center providers who also provide managed services provide these services. In some cases, the data center might just provide co-location services, and a third-party managed services or managed security services provider may provide these services. So I'll just take a couple of minutes talking about NTT. NTT has announced last October over $2 billion planned over the next 4 years. We've already bought land and we're setting up 6 hyperscale data center campuses. In addition to that, we are getting subsea mist cable project, which is going to land next year in both Mumbai and Chennai. And in addition to that, we're also doing hybrid wind solar captive plants in each of the states that we operate in. And we build data centers that are sustainable by design. We have got some of our data centers certified as gold and platinum rated by IGBC. We provide a combination of hybrid wind solar, either captive or through open access. And we are also setting up solar plant. We've already set up solar plants in Maharashtra. We're also setting up a solar plant in Karnataka, which is a hybrid wind solar plant. So we believe that investing in renewable energy is extremely important for a sustainable future. We want to be a responsible company, and I think many other data center providers are also doing the same thing. And more importantly, even the large clients that we have are demanding that we provide, become carbon neutral as soon as possible. So what are the key considerations in selecting a data center provider? One, choosing the data center location. You need to have reliable power. You need to have redundant fiber paths and abundant access to skilled resources. So the lifeline of the data center, that's power, that's your connectivity, fiber connectivity, and your power connectivity are very, very important. And of course, it should be in an area where you have good skills available. You want to, a lot of people are looking at energy efficiency as one of the key criteria. Obviously, energy efficiency translates, as I said, to the benefit to the client in terms of overall cost reduction. Many clients are looking at favoring those data centers who have invested in renewable energies, whether it's wind, solar, or hybrid wind solar. Carrier neutrality is a given, and almost all key data center providers in India are looking at getting fiber from multiple providers through multiple paths, so that the customer has a choice of which fiber provider he wants to use. But most importantly, it is operational processes and proven track record. Right, that's one of the key considerations when you're selecting a data center. So I will just summarize what I've spoken so far. Data centers in India are poised for massive growth. We believe they will triple in capacity by 2025. Some of the key client sectors include hyperscalers, enterprises, governments, and cloud-native companies. Policy measures, whether it's to do with data protection or whether it's to do with the central data center park policy or state incentives for data centers as part of the IT policies, are driving growth as well. I believe that all these things will attract a lot of PE investment into this space. 5G mobility and latency sensitive applications will soon prompt the adoption of edge data centers. Next generation data centers are resilient, green, secure, and elastic. And energy efficiency, renewable energy, operational track record, access to skilled resources, and good fiber and power connectivity are some of the key considerations that one must use to select the right data center provider. So I'd like to thank you for a patient hearing and thank Economic Times once again for inviting me as a keynote speaker in this session. Thank you.